Hey, this is Cory Marks, and you're watching Heavy New York.
Heavy New York!
What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at 11/7 Music, and we got Cory Marks here. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. I was just listening to your two singles, which is Outlaws and Outsiders, as well as Blame It on the Double. Could this maybe serve as a clear representation on who Cory Marks is, what your whole catalog will sound like, or could this just be the tip of the iceberg?
It's kind of the tip of the iceberg. I mean, being a country artist on the rock label, I'm very influenced by both styles of music, country and rock, and that's what this sound is. Blame It on the Double, Outlaws and Outsiders. But the cool thing about this entire record is there's a little bit of everything on there. There's stuff like this where it's heavier, featuring Ivan Moody and Mick Mars, of course, and Travis Tritt. But then there's stuff on the record like a song I wrote called Whiskey and Wine, which is more like a mix of Merle Haggard and Vince Gill. So it's cool. It's a very dynamic record, and I can't wait for the world to hear it.
Yeah, and you mentioned collaborating with Ivan Moody and Mick Mars. I mean, just kind of maybe get a cliche question here, but working with such reputable artists who are very great songwriters, that had to have maybe opened doors for you and maybe have taught you some new things for the future, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, working with guys like that who've I like to use the term been there, done that. They've been through. They've had really successful careers and just to be in the same realm as those guys and know that they love my music and want to be part of it is a cool experience to be able to work with them and have them feature on the track.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to getting inspired to write music, I like asking this: do you kind of need to put yourself in a certain place at a certain time in order for the ideas or inspiration to come through, or do ideas or inspirations just sometimes come out of nowhere?
Sometimes, honestly, they come out of nowhere, and I try not to think too much when I write. So there's something could just come up. I'll get a rhythm, a melody in my head, and a lyric, and I just kind of run off that. Most of my songs, especially on this record, are things that I went through personally, or have kind of seen some of my close friends go through. So I like to kind of base my writing on that, things that I've gone through, or a story that I know about. Rather, and then of course there's the good time and party songs on there too, right, where we all like to kick back and let loose on the weekends or after a long week or something like that. So that's all on there as well. So I like to write about that too.
Yeah, you take inspiration from many different sources.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Could a lyrical concept maybe determine the final outcome of the whole overall composition, or are lyrics or a subject matter kind of secondary in a way?
I mean, I think it's just kind of whatever comes to mind, really. Again, I like the record to be versatile, where you have a little bit of everything. You got heartbreak, you got feel good, and you also have, again, those party anthems as well. So I like to try to just mash it all up together and kind of it's a bit of a short life story, on a record of 10 or 12 songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, could the music be open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into what you could be singing about, maybe get them to see things in your point of view?
Well, I mean, I just, I write my story, and then you kind of take it however. I mean, for example, the song Better Off, I think, that, guys and girls can relate to it, right? Because, we're all in different relationships, and sometimes things don't turn out that well. And I always like to say about that song too is that it's not only a relationship for a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. It could be a family member or someone that there's toxic in your life, and you're just better off without it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, do you in a way try to capture a moment with your songs? Are each of these songs representative on what you were at that particular moment?
I think, especially this record, those are songs that are kind of in those moments, but you can always relive them, and you can take them two different ways as well too, right? You might be going through I could have been going through a harder time when I wrote the song, but now there's certain parts of that song where really get me in a different way, or that I really love singing live, and gives it a different feel to the entire song as well. So it's just cool, different realms and different ways to look at the song or feel it, rather.
Yeah, capturing a moment has to be kind of difficult, because sometimes you're working on a song for days or weeks, or sometimes even months. I mean, God bless the souls in Chinese democracy, but But like, so sometimes like the longer you work on a song, that has to kind of like, I guess, drag out the moment to its core, right?
Well, and for me, my writing is, there are some songs that I've written. I'll get halfway through and then I just kind of log out. I can't come up with anything else. So I might pick it up a month later, but that's very rare. Typically, it's either done in a half hour or maybe done in an afternoon kind of thing. So I get that idea out and put it on paper, and I'll come back and forth and maybe change a few lines or maybe words even. Mm-hmm. But typically I like to get whatever that is I'm feeling or thinking out and write that story, and then it is what it is.
Yeah. Kind of a silly question too. Like when you're writing lyrics, are you ever worried like you'll have like the best lyrics ever, but then you get the arrangement and see how it like goes one or two syllables over the
Oh yeah. They just sound a little funny. If the way the melody of the song, like you said, and that always comes to play too, because I'm a drummer as well. So so writing the music, you kind of want to make sense of it all, right? So sometimes the melody doesn't fit what you're writing, so it's kind of got to find that in the middle.
Yeah, singing a song about like whiskey and then having it be like the most melancholy like melody ever.
Yeah,
it's gonna sound a little off.
Yeah, so you gotta figure that out for sure in the writing process.
Yeah. Being a multi-instrumentalist, is there like a similar, like being a drummer, a guitarist, a vocalist, like is there maybe a similar creative energy that applies to every instrumental element, or do you kind of have to like switch modes depending on the instrument that you're playing in?
I mean, you know what, sometimes as I'm writing on guitar, I'll have have a rhythm section in my head already for drums, so it all kind of mashes together rather, and then certain things like Blame It on the Devil, where there's kind of like some Pantera-ish breakdowns. I mean, that's definitely influenced by the music I grew up on, which is a mix of everything, but having Kevin Churko producing your records, you're definitely going to get some pretty cool heavy badass stuff in there.
Yeah. Do you have a musical theory background at all, like even with like in song, like what scale or key you're working on? Or
actually, the funny thing about this, it always shocks people, but the only thing I ever failed was music, grade 10 music.
Really?
Yeah.
And look where you are now.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny how that all plays out. I really struggled with it, and even now I don't read or write it. Aside from the lyrics, but all of it's just memory and kind of hum out the chords or figure it out on guitar, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any like thing wrong with not knowing theory. Like sometimes it could help, but sometimes it could dictate you and be a disadvantage.
Definitely,
so.
Yeah. Yeah, like there's some guys, like sometimes I wish I could just read charts and play, but I think for me, especially as a drummer, it's more the feel and kind of, I might not play the exact same thing every night, but I'll make sure it's fitting for that song.
Yeah, if you're not feeling it, what, like why?
What's the point? Yeah.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah, here comes the most difficult question in the whole interview. How do you know when a song is done?
Well, as long as it hits about 3 minutes and you have a verse and a chorus and you're good.
Yeah. All right. Sometimes I get like the deepest question and that takes up like the entire interview time, or like I just get something concrete like that. But
yeah, no, I would say that's it. As long as you have, your verses and chorus and with or without a bridge or a solo. As long as you get to that 3 minute mark, I think you got yourself a song. Unless you're doing, something like 2112 where you can go on for 18 minutes or 20 minutes, which is totally cool too.
I was at Opeth the other night and I was a half hour late and I made it before the first song ended, so.
Wow, there you go. So, that's pretty, I saw them a few years ago, and yeah, they're a pretty kick-ass band.
Definitely. Now, when it comes to playing live, kind of like a similar question to what I asked about playing with multiple instruments, but when you're playing live, is that like a completely different energy or different process as well than when you're in songwriting mode, or is there maybe a similar method behind the madness that applies to both?
It's definitely more whiskey fueled, but no, it's more energetic, and that's what we did with this album. Is prior to going to the studio with Kevin. Kevin came to a show in Moose Jaw. It was an arena show. It was myself and Toby Keith, and because he just wanted to get a feel of who I am and what I do, kind of thing. And interestingly enough, there's a medley that we do in the middle of the show, and it's actually Holy Diver into Footloose, but the music is more Killswitch Engage the way they did it, but vocally I sing it like Dio. So there's definitely a different energy level when you're on stage and you have a crowd there. And that's what we did with this record. That's why there's a lot of kind of, you're belting out kind of like Chris Cornell style stuff, very energetic, and because what we want to do with this record is capture that live energy. And it's tough to do when you're sitting in a 6x6 booth or something like that, right? And you're not in front of 1,000 people or 5,000 people. So with this record, we really wanted to capture that.
Awesome. And the final question I wanted to ask you is, because during the course of this interview, we talked about we talked about country, we talked about rock. You mentioned Kill Switch Engage, but it's fair to say you like to experiment with your sound as much as possible. Like, people could label you as like country metal or something like that, but I think it's fair to say you try to experiment as much as possible, right?
Yeah, and I think what I'm trying to do is create a new, really in a way, a new genre, a new sound. Something that's mine, but what it is it's all the music that I was lucky enough to grow up on. Like, my dad was a huge Merle Haggard fan of Waylon Jennings, right? And so we also listened to like Buck Owens and Jimmy Rogers, like going back to the very start of country music and the very beginning. But then on the other side, my dad was also a huge Rush fan and Deep Purple and Rainbow and Ozzy Osbourne. So I grew up on that stuff, and then that ventured into when I became a teenager and started drumming. Well, then I got into Dream Theater, Lamb of God, and Arch Enemy and stuff like that, and Pantera, of course. So I kind of just wanted to grab all that music that I know, that I loved and grew up on, and create my own sound out of it.
There you go. And definitely sounds like that. When I heard those two singles, I was like, this is something new.
Awesome. That's what we're going for.
Awesome. So before we go, I'd like to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else you would like to promote with the album or anything like that?
I mean, just keep an eye out for new music and check out the videos on YouTube, and of course follow me at Cory Marks Music, and that's on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and of course check me out at CoryMarks.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody.
Appreciate it.
Cory Marks, this is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.